Today's topic is gluconeogenesis. As we know, any pathway we read under the following names like definition, other names, their salient features, what is a substrate. Of course, gluconeogenesis, the product is glucose you're going to synthesize. Site, actual pathway, stoichiometry of the reaction, energetics, regulation, inhibitors, and most important is the clinical significance and association of gluconeogenesis with other pathways, as all metabolic pathways are interlinked. So the objectives of gluconeogenesis session will be describe the gluconeogenesis pathway, enumerate the substrates for gluconeogenesis, explain the clinical significance of gluconeogenesis, describe Cori cycle and glucose alanine cycle or Cahill cycle. What is the definition? So gluconeogenesis is a process of formation of glucose from non-carbohydrate precursors. So the process of synthesis of glucose from a non-carbohydrate substrate is called gluconeogenesis. So you synthesize glucose newly from a non-carbohydrate sources. What are the non-carbohydrate sources? It can be a glucogenic amino acids, lactate, pyruvate, glycerol, and very rarely or odd chain fatty acids. So most important source is your glucogenic amino acids, lactate and pyruvate. So what is the importance of this gluconeogenesis? So when your glucose is available, you never want to synthesize the glucose. But how many times you take a meal per day? You take 3 times a day or 4 times a day. So normally in a well-fed state, it goes for 1 to 4 hours. Normally between 6 hours, you take one of your breakfast, lunch and your dinner. So only the dinner period, dinner and breakfast, the time is more. So yearly fasting, they say it is 4 to 16 hours. So when there is a fasting, when you call it as fasting, when it is between your 16 to 48 hours. So this is the duration when your gluconeogenesis starts, or the glucose is supplied by this pathway for the organs. So prolonged fasting also it will continue, and prolonged starvation also it is going to continue. So as you know, brain and RBC, they are solely dependent on your glucose for energy. So you know, the normal fasting plasma glucose is between 70 to 110 milligram per deciliter. So whether you eat or don't eat or remain in your fasting, your body has to maintain this 70 to 110 milligram per deciliter, so that proper supply of the glucose goes for the brain and the RBC. So even the rest of the body is under the starvation or devoid of glucose, your brain should have a continuous supply of glucose for its energy and proper functioning. Similarly, your RBC. So gluconeogenesis provides a major contribution of glucose to brain, RBC, kidney medulla, testis and also your embryonic tissue. Exercising muscle require a continuous supply of glucose for metabolic energy. So here gluconeogenetic pathway is going to provide the ATP so that the muscle contraction continues. So normally a brain requires 120 gram per day of your glucose. Your liver glycogen, which is storing the glycogen, can go for only 10 to 18 hours without a dietary carbohydrate or without eating any food. So when the fasting goes more than your 16 to 48 hours, so definitely you need a pathway of gluconeogenesis. Okay. Now we have seen the definition. What are the substrates of your gluconeogenesis? So first comes your lactate, glucogenic amino acid, alanine is a major contributor. Then comes your pyruvate, glycerol is a minor contribution. Also your propionate-CoA or propionate or odd chain fatty acids. You know that lipid can never be converted to glucose in your body. So one exception is your odd chain fatty acids. The site of your gluconeogenesis, this pathway happens both in your cytosol and your mitochondria. So remember, there are few pathways which happens both in mitochondria and cytosol. One is gluconeogenesis, heme synthesis, and urea cycle. Okay, so organ wise it is in the liver. So 90% of your gluconeogenesis happens in the liver and 10% in your renal cortex. Thereby liver becomes the contributing for the maintenance of your blood glucose level within the normal limits, whether it is in fasting stage or in a starvation stage. So liver contributes to the blood glucose to maintain in a proper homeostasis. So normally what happens in glycolysis, glucose is converted to pyruvate, pyruvate to lactate, or pyruvate goes to your acetyl-CoA and goes for your TCA cycle to provide you energy. Gluconeogenesis is you are going to synthesize glucose from non-carbohydrate sources. So gluconeogenesis is not just reversal of glycolysis because it is not energetically favorable. Although few steps are shared or the few enzymes are shared between the pathway of glycolysis and gluconeogenesis, gluconeogenesis is not a reversal of glycolysis. You need to spend ATP to synthesize your glucose from non-carbohydrate sources. Okay. So suppose pyruvate is a common substrate. Lactate, pyruvate. Lactate can freely circulate, but pyruvate cannot move out of a cell. So how do we get it to the liver for gluconeogenesis? So pyruvate must be changed into something that can leave the cell. So the pyruvate can either be forming lactate by anaerobic glycolysis or the LDH, lactate dehydrogenase action, or pyruvate can be converted to your alanine, which is your transamination reaction. So that is the link between your protein metabolism and your gluconeogenesis also. So now let us see the gluconeogenesis from lactate as your non-carbohydrate substrate. So lactate has to be converted to pyruvate, then pyruvate has to be converted to glucose for gluconeogenesis. So you already know for glycolysis there are 3 rate limiting enzymes or irreversible steps, that is your hexokinase, phosphofructokinase and the pyruvate kinase. These rate limiting or irreversible steps have to be reversed. So for this thing you have 4 important rate limiting enzymes in your gluconeogenesis. So one is your pyruvate carboxylase and phosphoenol pyruvate carboxykinase, which reverses your pyruvate kinase step. Third one is your fructose 1,6-bisphosphatase, which reverses your second step, that is phosphofructokinase of glycolysis. Third one is your glucose 6-phosphatase, which is going to release your glucose as free glucose into the blood, which can be utilized by the brain and the other tissues. So this reverses your hexokinase or the glucokinase step. So there are 4 rate limiting enzymes in your gluconeogenesis. Okay, now we will see the actual pathway. So in the cytosol you have the lactate. So that lactate can be converted to pyruvate. It is a reversible reaction. Enzyme is lactate dehydrogenase and you require a coenzyme NAD to NADH. This happens in the cytosol. Now this pyruvate has to be converted to oxaloacetic acid by pyruvate carboxylase so that this can go for your gluconeogenesis. You remember in TCA cycle to start you need glucose, also you need your oxaloacetic acid to form citric acid. So what happens in a fasting or a starvation? There is no glucose. So the glucose forms the pyruvate. The pyruvate also forms your acetyl-CoA. Pyruvate can also form the oxaloacetic acid. So thereby your TCA cycle happens in a well-fed stage to synthesize ATP. Whereas in fasting stage your oxaloacetic acid is not present. So TCA cycle cannot happen. So you need energy. So for that you need both your pyruvate and your oxaloacetic acid. So pyruvate is converted to oxaloacetic acid by pyruvate carboxylase, and this reaction requires ATP and you require a coenzyme, that is biotin. Okay. So pyruvate carboxylase is a which converts pyruvate to your oxaloacetic acid. This happens in 2 steps. So enzyme, the coenzyme which carries your carbon dioxide, first carboxybiotin enzyme and energy is utilized. That carboxybiotin enzyme plus pyruvate forms your oxaloacetic acid. So now the enzyme again goes for your, with the biotin help, for the conversion of more and more of pyruvate to oxaloacetic acid. Okay. Now the oxaloacetic acid is in the mitochondria. So this oxaloacetic acid can be freely transferred to the cytosol, and that you know malate aspartate shuttle which carries your NADH, which you have studied in your ETC cycle. So oxaloacetic acid now crosses your mitochondrial membrane and moves to your cytosol. So this is your malate aspartate shuttle. So this is the mitochondrial side and this is your cytosol side, and you require an enzyme malate dehydrogenase. This is the mitochondrial malate dehydrogenase enzyme. This is your cytosolic malate dehydrogenase enzyme. So for the conversion of your malate to aspartate, so you require a transamination reaction, and that is catalyzed by your aspartate transaminase. So oxaloacetic acid plus glutamate forms your aspartate to alpha ketoglutarate. So you can see here malate is converted to your malate can easily move in and out, shuttling with your aspartate. So you require malate dehydrogenase, also your aspartate aminotransferase. So oxaloacetic acid is converted to aspartate. Aspartate goes to the cytoplasm. Again oxaloacetic acid converted to oxaloacetic acid by transamination reaction, that is aspartate transaminase. And now this oxaloacetic acid depends on the requirement. This will go for gluconeogenesis. If the oxaloacetic acid is in the mitochondria, it will move on to your TC cycle. Now the situation is you don't have glucose to form pyruvate and acetyl-CoA. So only a minimal amount can go for your TC cycle. So most of your oxaloacetic acid is transferred in starvation to form your into the cytosol so that it can enter your gluconeogenesis pathway. Okay. So next step is now oxaloacetic acid is in the cytoplasm. This is acted upon by the another enzyme, that is phosphoenol pyruvate carboxykinase. This forms your phosphoenol pyruvate, and this requires either ATP or GTP. If it is in the renal medulla, it is your GTP. If it is in the other tissues, it's your GTP. So now here reverse the steps of pyruvate kinase by 2 enzyme pyruvate carboxylase and phosphoenol pyruvate carboxykinase. Now this phosphoenol pyruvate is in the cytoplasm. So this can go for the rest of the steps of your glycolysis. So phosphoenol pyruvate is converted to 2-phosphoglycerate by the enzyme enolase. 2-phosphoglycerate is converted to 3-phosphoglycerate by phosphoglyceromutase. 3-phosphoglycerate to 1,3-bisphosphoglycerate by phosphoglycerate kinase. So these are the common enzymes of glycolysis and your gluconeogenetic pathway, which is present in the cytoplasm. Okay. So 1,3-bisphosphoglycerate is converted to your glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate by glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate dehydrogenase. You know glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate is a 3-carbon. So glucose is your 6-carbon. So one lactate can form one glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate. So 2 pyruvate or the 2 lactate will form your 1 glucose molecule. So remember, this glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate dehydrogenase requires your NADH. So this NADH is nullified by your malate aspartate shuttle, where you also consume your, where you synthesize your NADH, that NADH is utilized here. So glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate is converted to your fructose 1,6-bisphosphate. This fructose 1,6-bisphosphate is acted upon by the enzyme fructose 1,6-bisphosphatase to form your fructose 6-phosphate. You remove your phosphate as inorganic phosphate molecule and you require a cofactor magnesium. So fructose 6-phosphate isomerizes to form your glucose 6-phosphate. So now what is the last step and what is the enzyme? Glucose 6-phosphate has to be released as free glucose into the blood or the tissue for utilization. So that happens with the help of the enzyme glucose 6-phosphatase. See here, this glucose 6-phosphatase has a special location. It is a membrane bound enzyme attached to your endoplasmic reticulum membrane. Calcium binding protein, you can see here, glucose 6-phosphatase is attached to something called SP. It is a calcium binding protein, is necessary for phosphatase activity. So glucose and inorganic phosphates are shuttled back to the cytosol by a pair of transporters. The glucose transporters in the endoplasmic reticulum membrane is like those found in the plasma membrane. So if you really say, so initially we said gluconeogenesis happens in both cytosol and mitochondria. Of course, endoplasmic reticulum is in the cytoplasm. So if you say very correctly, it happens in all the three areas. So liver only provides your free glucose to enter blood because glucose 6-phosphatase enzyme is present only in liver. Muscle cannot provide free glucose because glucose 6-phosphatase, which is the last step to convert your glucose 6-phosphate to glucose, free glucose, is absent in the muscle or any other tissue. So when in the muscle, the gluconeogenesis stops at glucose 6-phosphate. Now this glucose 6-phosphate is ready for glycolysis and providing energy. It enters your energy yielding pathway. So this glucose 6-phosphate provides energy for muscle activity, whereas gluconeogenesis in the liver can only provide blood glucose or can only provide free glucose to the blood, which can be utilized for the brain and the RBC. So that is your Cori cycle. So what happens in the Cori cycle? So when there is hypoglycemia or starvation, so glucose will undergo, already there is accumulation of your pyruvate, which is again converted to your anaerobic glycolysis to your lactate, because pyruvate cannot enter your TCA cycle because oxaloacetic acid is not present. Lactate can freely move out from the muscle to the blood and which is taken up by the liver. So lactate is again converted to pyruvate and pyruvate back to the glucose by all the 4 implementing enzymes. So this is your Cori cycle of transfer of your glucose to lactate, lactate to glucose. So this Jetty Cori and Carl Cori are the persons who has proposed your Cori cycle. They are the Nobel laureates received together for this Cori cycle, and this was one of the historical landmark in the carbohydrate metabolism. So there is a Nobel Prize in 1947 for the physiology and medicine. Okay. So we are seeing the synthesis of glucose from your lactate or pyruvate. Now we will see the synthesis of glucose from the other non-carbohydrate sources, that is your glucogenic amino acids. In this glucogenic amino acids, the first comes, the main is your alanine. Okay. So whatever, so protein breakdown gives your amino acid, again this makes your pyruvate. You know pyruvate is again converted to oxaloacetic acid can freely move in and out of your mitochondria by what? Malate aspartate shuttle. And different amino acids, glucogenic amino acids enter the TCA cycle at different points. This also we have seen. So they can either form pyruvate, oxaloacetic acid, or the succinyl-CoA, we will be seeing it, and ultimately they follow the same pathway for pyruvate to glucose conversion to form your glucose in the body. Okay. Glucogenic amino acids, so net synthesis is either they form pyruvate or oxaloacetic acid. So then when you call this amino acids as glucogenic, so the carbon skeleton of them has to contribute either to formation of pyruvate or oxaloacetic acid. So that is the classification based on your metabolic fate, either glucogenic, ketogenic, or both glucogenic and ketogenic amino acids. So glucogenic amino acids and glucogenic and ketogenic amino acids can form pyruvate or oxaloacetic acid. Thereby they can provide or make a pathway to synthesize your glucose in the body. So threonine, isoleucine, tyrosine and tryptophan, they all are glucogenic and ketogenic amino acids. The aneuploidic reactions support and provide oxaloacetic acid. So you remember phenylalanine, tyrosine, the carbon skeleton forms your fumarate. Valine, isoleucine and methionine forms your succinyl-CoA. Proline, histidine and arginine forms your alpha-ketoglutarate. Glycine, alanine is most important. Glycine, alanine, serine and threonine and cysteine forms your pyruvate. So these fumarate, succinyl-CoA, glutamate, pyruvate, these are intermediates of your TCA cycle which can go for gluconeogenetic pathway, and these are aneuploidic reaction. So you can see here pyruvate is formed from alanine, remember glycine, serine, hydroxyproline. Phenylalanine, tyrosine forms fumarate. Valine, isoleucine, methionine, succinyl-CoA. Histidine, proline, glutamate and arginine will form your glutamate. This glutamate can form by transamination reaction to alpha-ketoglutarate. So these all things can ultimately go and form your pyruvate. Pyruvate is converted to your oxaloacetic acid. Oxaloacetic acid can be converted to pyruvate or to phosphoenol pyruvate, which can go for your gluconeogenesis pathway. So we are seen the Cori cycle. This conversion of glucogenic amino acid to glucose, you call it as alanine cycle or Cahill cycle. Okay, there are glucogenic amino acids which will form your pyruvate, or the breakdown of alanine as itself will lead to your gluconeogenesis. So in the muscle, protein is broken down, you have lot of alanine and branch chain amino acids which can be easily transported across the blood, reaches your liver, and where again transamination reaction happens by alanine transaminase to form your pyruvate, and pyruvate to glucose, again the same pathway. So Cahill cycle is the cycle where the muscle alanine, by using of transamination reaction, it is taken back to the liver. Again by transamination reaction of alanine transaminase, you synthesize your glucose. So in Cori cycle you required aspartate transaminase, and in Cahill cycle you required alanine transaminase. So this is a transamination reaction. This is a very important link between your gluconeogenesis and your protein catabolism. The first step of your protein catabolism is transamination reaction. So transfer of amino acid from one amino acid to a keto acid. So this is a combination of your Cori cycle and Cahill cycle. So lactate and alanine only can escape out of your muscle tissue, which is taken up by the liver, and in the liver you have the gluconeogenetic pathway. Release your glucose as free glucose to the blood. Why? Because glucose 6-phosphatase is only present in the liver. Okay. So lactate, pyruvate, glucogenic amino acids over. Now we will see how glycerol is converted to your glucose. So glycerol by action of glycerol kinase. Kinase means you require ATP. Convert to glycerol 3-phosphate. So glycerol 3-phosphate dehydrogenase forms dihydroxyacetone phosphate. The rest of the steps are same. We have seen. So 2 glycerol molecule is required to form your 1 glucose molecule. Next is your propanol-CoA. As I told you, fatty acid can never form glucose. Why? Because PDH or pyruvate dehydrogenase step is an irreversible step. So never a lipid can be converted to your glucose in the body. The exception is your odd chain fatty acid oxidation, which forms your succinyl-CoA. So when your odd chain fatty acid undergoes your oxidation, they form acetyl-CoA plus the last step they form propanol-CoA. This propanol-CoA will form dimethylmalonyl-CoA by propanol-CoA carboxylase. DMME is converted to LMME. This L-methylmalonyl-CoA is converted to your succinyl-CoA. This succinyl-CoA can enter your TCA cycle. Remember, this succinyl-CoA can go for your formation of oxaloacetic acid. So valine, isoleucine, methionine and odd chain fatty acids, all these things they form propionyl-CoA. This propionyl-CoA is converted to your succinyl-CoA, which require your enzyme, your propionyl-CoA carboxylase. Again, this carboxylase means you require biotin enzyme. Methylmalonyl-CoA isomers require a coenzyme of vitamin B12, and succinyl-CoA is formed. So in nutshell, we have seen the gluconeogenesis pathway from lactate, pyruvate, glucogenic amino acid, glycerol and odd chain fatty acids. So as I told you, this step happens in mitochondria. So what is the enzyme? Pyruvate carboxylase. In the cytoplasm, you have two enzymes, that is phosphoenol pyruvate carboxykinase and fructose 1,6-bisphosphate. And what is present in the endoplasmic reticulum? Of course, that is also in the cytoplasm. That is your glucose 6-phosphatase. So these are the site of the rate limiting enzymes of gluconeogenesis. Okay. So as I told you, if you look at the energetics, you consume ATP for the production of your glucose, and it differs when you want to convert your lactate to glucose or alanine to glucose or glycerol to your glucose. So little bit of difference will be there. So in a step of glycerol 3-phosphate dehydrogenase, NADH is consumed. This NADH is formed when during a malate aspiration. So that is nullified. So it is not counted. So 2-pyruvate or 2-lactate, 2-alanine, whatever to be converted to your pyruvate, you require or you spend 6 ATPs to form or synthesis your 1 glucose molecule. Now let us go into the regulation of the most important part, understanding of your gluconeogenesis. So gluconeogenesis is stimulated by, of course, low blood glucose, that is hypoglycemia. Glucagon is the key hormone to stimulate your gluconeogenesis. Citrate, acetyl-CoA, oxaloacetic acid, pyruvate, lactate and aniline are your substrates and your allosteric modifiers which will activate your gluconeogenetic pathway. Of course, high blood glucose with insulin, low energy charge. Why low energy charge? You require ATP for synthesis of gluconeogenesis also. And fructose 2,6-bisphosphate is the allosteric inhibitor of your gluconeogenesis. So citrate is an activator, fructose 2,6-bisphosphate is an inhibitor. So as you know, any pathway regulation is by your substrate availability and the product. If you have less glucose, you need to synthesize your glucose. So gluconeogenesis pathway will be active by the hormonal effect of glucagon. And how does this happen? Through the rate limiting enzymes. That is your pyruvate carboxylase, phosphoenol pyruvate carboxykinase, fructose 1,6-bisphosphate and glucose 6-phosphatase. Either by induction repression of the key enzymes or by allosteric modification of this enzyme or by covalent modification. What is covalent modification? Either phosphorylation or dephosphorylating these enzymes. So high glucose level and insulin will promote glycolysis. Low blood glucose and glucagon promote gluconeogenesis. So to write the regulation of glycolysis or gluconeogenesis or any blood glucose regulation, you always remember these two terminology. Low glucose level and glucagon promote gluconeogenesis. High glucose level and insulin promote glycolysis. So with this basic concept, you can write the complete regulation. Okay. So this is the regulation of each step it is shown with the enzymes. You know, gluconeogenesis, glucose 6-phosphatase is activated by low glucose level and glucose 6-phosphate. Fructose 1,6-bisphosphate, again low glucose level activates it. Hormone glucagon activates it. It is inhibited by your AMP and insulin. Pyruvate carboxylase again is activated by your low glucose level. Glucagon will activate, insulin will inhibit. How induction repression of the key enzymes happen? You know, glucagon, glucocorticoid and epinephrine will induce the rate limiting enzymes, whereas insulin will inhibit the enzymes. allosteric modification. So in allosteric modification, it can be a positive modifier or it can be a negative modifier or inhibitor. So acetyl-CoA will allosterically stimulate your pyruvate carboxylase, whereas AMP, fructose 1,6-bisphosphate, and your fructose 2,6-bisphosphate will allosterically inhibit your fructose 1,6-bisphosphatase. So this is a nutshell of your allosteric or reciprocal regulation of your glycolysis and gluconeogenesis. So although glycolysis and gluconeogenesis are not exact reversal, you need a glycolytic pathway for a cell to synthesize ATP. But at the same time, if you take a muscle cell or the liver cell, you need to go for the gluconeogenetic pathway. How these two pathways are coordinated in the same cell. So in the gluconeogenesis, the rate limiting enzyme is your fructose 1,6-bisphosphatase. So this is allosterically activated by your citrate, whereas low energy, that is AMP and fructose 2,6-phosphate will inhibit it. Whereas the same fructose 2,6-bisphosphate will activate your glycolysis. Same citrate which is going to activate gluconeogenesis will inhibit your glycolysis. So when you have a high energy, when you have more citrate, that means you are enough of TCA cycle and ATP. So automatically glycolysis is inhibited. So substrate favors a forward reaction and product inhibits the forward reaction. This you have to remember for allosteric regulation. So you remember citrate. Citrate is for gluconeogenesis, it will positively activate the pathway. Whereas the same citrate, if it is more, it will inhibit the glycolysis. If you have more glucose 6-phosphate, you don't need to synthesize your glucose at all. So that will inhibit your gluconeogenesis. So glucose 6-phosphate is more. It will automatically go and inhibit your rest of the gluconeogenetic pathway. Whereas if glucose 6-phosphate is more, that will activate your glycolysis, because you don't want to keep your glucose, you convert it to some other thing. Okay. So coming to the hormonal action, so blood glucose is decreased by insulin, whereas glucagon increases because it favors your gluconeogenesis. How glucagon favors your gluconeogenesis? By phosphorylating enzymes by cyclic AMP dependent protein kinases. Whereas insulin dephosphorates the enzymes and acts through phosphatase enzyme, and induction of glycolytic enzymes represses your pyruvate carboxylase. Okay. So as I told you, they are reciprocally regulated. How this reciprocally regulated happens? So there's something called futile cycle, because you don't derive anything out of it. So you can see here, so normally glucose, when it goes for glycolysis, it forms fructose 1,6-bisphosphate. But in between you have a step called where phosphofructokinase 2 is active, and it forms fructose 2,6-bisphosphate. So this will inhibit your gluconeogenetic enzyme, whereas it activates your phosphofructokinase 1. Hope you are understanding. So when you want to have a glycolysis pathway, you have phosphofructokinase enzyme 1, whereas there is another enzyme called phosphofructokinase 2, which will form fructose 2,6-bisphosphate, which will inhibit your gluconeogenesis. Glycolysis is favored. When your body wants glucose to be synthesized, what happens? You have fructose 1,6-bisphosphatase, and glucagon will phosphorylate these enzymes and makes it deactivated. So fructose 1,6-phosphatase converts to your fructose 6-phosphate and glucose is formed. So by converting a PFK2 and fructose 2,6-bisphosphatase, you gain nothing. Only you have a regulation of your glycolysis or a gluconeogenesis what a cell requires. Okay. So in a covalent modification, I told it will phosphorylate a enzyme. So glucagon phosphorylates your fructose 1,6-bisphosphate, thereby helps in conversion of fructose 1,6-bisphosphate to fructose 6-phosphate. Whereas fructose 2,6-bisphosphate will inhibit your fructose 1,6-bisphosphate. So this fructose 2,6-phosphate is formed by phosphofructokinase 2. The same glucagon, glucocorticoid epinephrine, which phosphorylates this enzyme, will also phosphorylate fructose 2,6-bisphosphate, whereas this is inactivated but this is activated. Thereby glucagon favors gluconeogenesis. Okay. In the fed stage, so in fasting stage, this is what happens. Okay, glucagon phosphorylates, whereas in the fed stage you have lot of glucose, and this glucose lot will form your fructose 2,6-bisphosphate. This increases your fructose 2,6-bisphosphate, which is because of your active phosphofructokinase 2. So this will again activate your glycolysis, whereas when PFK2 is active, more fructose 2,6-bisphosphate, this will inhibit your fructose 1,6-bisphosphatase or gluconeogenesis. So insulin will dephosphorylate your fructose 2,6-bisphosphatase, thereby it becomes active, more of fructose 2,6-bisphosphate. So in a fed stage, more a cell goes in favor of glycolysis and your gluconeogenesis is inhibited by fructose 2,6-bisphosphate. So next comes what are the clinical significance of your gluconeogenesis. So not only your glucagon, we have seen glucocorticoid and epinephrine will also favor your gluconeogenesis or hyperglycemia. So that is why a patient put on steroid, often they are checked for blood glucose level, because steroid will favor gluconeogenesis and patient may have a blood picture of diabetes. So when a patient put on steroid therapy, he comes for your blood glucose evaluation, you find it is very high, might be it is because of your steroid drug which mimics like patient has gone for diabetes mellitus. So very in a precaution way a steroid is used. So steroid is indicated only for a specific condition, just like that steroid cannot be used for a treatment of any chronic illness. Chronic alcoholic patients will also develop fasting hypoglycemia because ethanol inhibits gluconeogenesis. Ethanol metabolism causes cytoplasmic NADH raise. So ethanol will give a false high level of NADH. If you have a high level of NADH, the cell feels that it has got high ATP level or a false fed stage. So that will inhibit your gluconeogenesis. So the pyruvate to malate to oxaloacetate reaction are reversed. So excessive ingestion of alcohol results in hypoglycemia. Lactate also accumulates as NADH level is high. So neither lactate can go for gluconeogenetic pathway or pyruvate can be converted to your oxaloacetic acid, because malate aspartate shuttle also fails because of your ethanol metabolism in the liver, which produces your NADH. So ethanol is metabolized by what enzyme? Alcohol dehydrogenase. So that dehydrogenase will require your NAD, and that NAD is converted to your NADH. So this will increase your NADH level, which will inhibit your malate aspartate shuttle, also your lactate dehydrogenase. Coming to diabetes mellitus, where there is an insulin deficiency. So you might see people, they will have a very increased crave for food, that is polyphagia, but still there will be a muscle wasting. So you have three symptoms of diabetes: polyphagia, polydyspia and polyuria. So with polyphagia also they will have a muscle wasting. This is because release of protein and alanine catabolism from muscle for gluconeogenesis. So insulin is deficient, so glucose cannot enter the cell. The body sensitizes that in a hypoglycemic state, and there is activation of your gluconeogenesis, where glucogenic amino acids in the muscles are broken down and the patient will have weight loss. So in that condition, if you see GN ratio is 3.65, 1 gram of nitrogen or protein will yield to your 3.65 gram of glucose. So that is called GN ratio or DN ratio. So it is increased when protein catabolism is increased. This can be due to your insulin deficiency, starvation, fever, hyperthyroidism, and also cancer. So that's why in cancer also you have a weight loss. Another clinical significance is your pyruvate carboxylase deficiency. It is an autosomal recessive condition where there is a neurological symptom, mental retardation due to deficient fuel supply to the nervous system or the brain. So increased lactic acid and keto acids leads to your metabolic acidosis. Hyperammonemia may also be seen. So pyruvate carboxylase is one of the important rate limiting enzyme. Some sort of supplement of biotin might induce the pyruvate carboxylase activity. So in summary, you can synthesize your glucose from lactate. Lactate has to be converted to pyruvate. From the glucogenic amino acids, you can form pyruvate or intermediates of TCA cycle, that is fumarate, succinyl-CoA, alpha-ketoglutarate, or propionyl-CoA from odd chain fatty acids, valine, isoleucine and methionine, which also enters your TCA cycle intermediates. From the glycerol by glycerol kinase activity. So all these are non-carbohydrate precursors from which you can synthesize your glucose. So you require ATP, of course 2 pyruvate or 2 lactate or 2 alanine, you require 6 ATP for your 1 glucose molecule synthesis.